Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you were not aware, you are in the session that's all about teams in the architecture. Who loves information architecture? Woohoo! Okay, yes, I've had a lot of caffeine today. You're welcome. So, none of us will fall asleep. My name, if we have not met yet at this wonderful conference, is Joy Apple. I am a Microsoft MVP, and I'm a modern workplace strategist for the Pate Group, which is a great little company based out of the Midwest in Cincinnati. I myself, these days, hail from Tulsa, Oklahoma. If you're a social media person, @Joy of SharePoint is me. Fun fact, yes, the title is Teams in the Architecture, but there's a good chance we're going to talk about SharePoint quite a bit for the next 53 minutes and 876 seconds. All right, thank you, sponsors. These sponsors have been absolutely fantastic. They have allowed us to all be here. They have helped pay for the amazing food. Organizer sponsors, you are the best. Yes. All right, let's talk about modern architecture, because we're done with the old classic stuff. Is anybody still living in like classic SharePoint or on-prem SharePoint? Anybody? Bueller? Anyone? Okay. All right. Modern architecture, it's not just about SharePoint sites anymore. This is actually a conversation we circle around and around and around internally inside of my company as well, right? Iron sharpens iron, and it's good to keep having these conversations and sometimes debates internally about what is information architecture. It's a lot of stuff. We don't have time today to go into that. I actually co-present a full-day workshop that's nothing about modern information architecture. Microsoft Teams. Anybody ever heard of Microsoft Teams? Few people have. Okay, good. It's this up-and-coming, tool that helps us do stuff. Plays a huge role inside of information architecture. There's a lot to it. I love the fact that Sherry's session came before this one. I told her, I was like, you're teeing up a lot of stuff for me here. So any of the folks that followed over, this is going to kind of build on that conversation. But used to, from a SharePoint perspective, if we were on-prem or even first moving into online, the architecture was really our sites. Almost all of them were team sites. Okay, all of them were team sites, just some of them were publishing sites. Things have changed a little bit now. Now we have to look at Microsoft Teams. What the heck is Teams and why do I care, right? I have this conversation with clients pretty frequently because they got into Teams for the chat. Any of your customers or your organizations, is that where you started? Chat and meetings, right? Really easy. Because Teams is kind of this chat-based communication platform. Lori, if you're listening, close your ears, don't hear this next part. Because when Microsoft first, what are we going on, 4.5, almost 5 years ago, announced Teams, because it was this new chat thing, they really weren't talking about Skype going away, but they were talking about this new great chat tool. You could have heard my eyes roll. I'm sorry. Because did the world really need one more chat tool? No. I mean, come on, we still don't. We have Teams, we don't need anything else now. But it's more than that. It also is presenting itself and providing for us a hub for collaboration on critical, relevant files. I'll tell you too, when I first jumped into Teams, I don't like to read the previews for things. I don't watch the trailers for movies. I want to go in and be surprised. So I went into Teams, clicked on it as soon as I could get my hands on it, and I just wanted to click the buttons and figure it out. I almost lost my mind when I saw the Files tabs. I was like, what? What? We're giving people somewhere else to put their stuff? What? What? And then I clicked on it and I saw the things that we're going to see here later, and I went, oh, I see what's happening here. So we chat, we have meetings, we do calling, we do collaboration on documents with our teams, for teams and teams. And then there's other stuff inside of Teams. One day I'm going to do this session after hours. Dave, maybe we'll do this in Cabo, and we'll do a drinking game of all the different ways you can say Teams in a presentation about Teams for teamwork for our teams. There are basically two primary types of teams and teams. There are public teams, Anyone can join a public team. You can get a code and send it to people, and they can use the team and join the team. They can search for the team. They're private teams. Private teams, you have to explicitly be added into the team to become a member and or an owner. So I got public teams, the org-wide team. Anybody have an organizational-wide team, right? That gets set up. I think you can have about 5 org-wide teams inside of your tenant now, and it's kind of like the Hotel California of teams. You can come in, but you can't leave unless you get kicked out. And you probably don't want to get kicked out. HR is probably involved at that point. We don't want to make HR unhappy. But that is a type of public team. The components of our teams, pretty basic here. We may have some folks that are relatively new to teams. When we walk into a team, we're going to see some stuff. We're going to see channels, right? That's kind of the main thing that makes up our team. But our channels are going to have posts. It used to be conversations. Now it's posts. The Files tab, the plus sign where you can go and add other things to your channels. But what we don't see when we first start poking around inside of Teams, well, first off is that Microsoft 365 group. We had a little bit of a conversation of that in this session right before this one about how when those M365 groups showed up in Outlook, people lost their minds. They did not know what to do about it. There was wailing and gnashing of teeth, sirens in the distance. So you've got the Microsoft 365 group that acts like a security service, basically, right? You put people in the group, they have access to the team, and then they get access to that connected SharePoint site that is married to the team, that does amazing things for the team. The Outlook inbox that's associated with the team, the planner plan, the OneNote notebook, the group calendar, right? So you've got that nice little group, bundle people together in that group, and it manages adding folks anywhere they need to be. Let's first talk now about what Teams is not. Teams is not a file management tool. It's just not. Who remembers the day when you finally could go into the Files tab and you could actually see some of the other metadata around the files that you had put in there? I was actually in front of customers, and I think I did a little bounce. So I was so happy you could see some metadata inside of Teams. It was a great day for me. It's not a file management tool. It's a make it easy to get to stuff tool. If we want to use a really long, fun to say because it makes you sound really smart sentence, it is a service application delivery platform. It's almost like a desktop for our desktop. I come to Teams, I can get to my files, I can upload the files in the Teams interface, right? I can get to them, I can have the conversations, I can put tabs in my channels, I can go get to other sites, SharePoint sites. Anybody doing Viva connection right now? I can actually get to my intranet from inside of Teams now and other applications. But Teams is not a file management tool. That's why we have SharePoint. SharePoint is, I used this analogy yesterday, it's the big blade in the Swiss Army knife for Microsoft 365. All of the goodness we do with our documents in the Microsoft 365 world gonna happen inside of SharePoint, even OneDrive, because OneDrive basically is baby SharePoint. If you're ever on the online interface for OneDrive for Business, you notice up in the address bar, it's my dash SharePoint, right? It's mine. It's my little baby SharePoint world with my stuff. SharePoint is where we go for the file management stuff inside of Microsoft 365. So when I'm inside of my team, in Teams, doing teamwork, I click on that Files tab, and I've got that really awesome Open in SharePoint button. That's the button that kept me from actually losing my mind that day when I first went into Teams and started clicking around to see what was going on. Because it was a bad moment. It was a bad moment. If I'm chatting with somebody one-on-one, right, I have a quick question, I need a quick answer, and then I'm going to go on about my life. I'm in one-on-one or group chat. Anything that's shared there is going to be managed by OneDrive. So if I share a file with Sherry, that share link is going to be from my OneDrive. That's where I go to get back to it, to kick her back out when I'm tired of her messing with it. If she shares it with me, it's a sharing link from her OneDrive. Right now, the default, I don't think this is updated yet, is edit. I can't share in chat and say Sherry can only view. I do believe changes are coming for that soon.
I don't think there's a way to set that. I think it's just by
Yeah.
default.
Yep, at the moment. If you want to manage your files, though, you wouldn't do that from Teams. I could go into OneDrive and choose exactly how I wanted to share with Sherry instead of going through the interface. But if it's all here, if I'm sharing it inside of Teams, that's where my team's going to come. We're going to get to it. So let's step back for a minute and look at our architecture high level. Because we kind of get down into Teams sometimes and we get lost in the weeds of all the buttons and all the clicks. And it's helpful to maybe take a step back and look at the bigger picture of what's going on. So modern architecture for Microsoft 365 is flat. It is very, very, very flat. The best practice is to not build subsites inside of site collections. I can't teamify a subsite, right? I can't give that group of people an area to work inside of a subsite in Teams. Traditionally, and I'm happy to throw the microphone around if we want to have a conversation. I love having conversations. I am an extrovert. So traditionally, we were talking about our site collections. What would be a good use case for building subsites inside of our site collections? Sherry, you'll do it.
Well, shared terminology, being able to use term store, but they're fixing that now. That was my biggest complaint for a long time.
Okay.
Content types, shared.
All that good stuff, which is going to get good again one day, but not today.
Not yet.
Not yet, not yet. Any other thoughts on use cases for creating sub-sites for my primary site collection? Okay, that's fine. One big reason is, let's say HR. Any HR people in the room?
Recovery.
Would it be bad if everybody in HR saw all of the documents in the HR? Because some of those might be submitted requests for short-term disability. Some of them might be disciplinary actions, right? There might be some PII there. So HR used to create one big site, and then they would create sub-sites for those different functional areas inside of their department. Wellness. Yeah, Dave?
The other thing you used to see was that HR would create one.
There you go. Throw it. Throw it. Oh.
Testing 1, 2. Yeah, so
Hi.
the way it used to work is that the HR would create a public site to put in the calendars and the
Yes.
the benefits enrollment information, and then the HR private site, they would put all the private employee stuff. And the smaller the company, the more willing to keep it open so that everybody
Yes.
in HR could see. And, you know, from 2003 till now, that has evolved quite a bit, where
Quite a bit.
oftentimes they just create a separate maybe document library for each employee and secure that down to usually the director of HR plus the person responsible maybe for last names A through F or something like
Sure.
that. It just depends.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's a good way to break up the data, secure it, make sure the right people are there. But if I'm part of HR and I work in the wellness team, I don't probably have access to like the submitted benefits requests, employee reviews, things like that. So I need a place as wellness where I can work on the wellness documents, do the edits, do the revisions. Maybe we have wellness policies that need to be put in place. Maybe we're working on a health and wellness fair that's going to be coming up. Probably working very closely with corporate communications on return to the office. Things like that, how to stay healthy when we go back to, I hate to say back to work, because let's be real, we've been working. We've been working hard from home, back to the office. If I do that in a subsite, I don't get Teams, right? And then that architecture gets deep, and we want to keep the architecture flat. So we go out and we build a site collection for wellness, a site collection for benefits, a site collection for, I'm running out of things, retirement people that do stuff with the documents. I don't know, I'm not in HR. But everybody gets their own site collection, their own working space with the appropriate permissions around it. There still might be an all HR team so they can chat together as a team, share announcements for everybody as a department. So everybody gets their own site collection. Shoot, I ruined it. I just wanted to zoom in here. So hopefully that's readable. It's interesting that the more you do this, you notice I say HR team site per functional area, team per functional area, because that's a one-to-one relationship, right? Training and development, right? They get things. But there's also this communication side. David, he knew where this was going to go because he's lived this life before. HR still needs a place that they can share with everybody in the organization the stuff that employees need to get to. That goes on a SharePoint communication site. Communication sites are beautiful. Does anybody notice that SharePoint got sexy? It's awesome. Finally. I mean, she's always been a smart girl. She's pretty now, too. But communication sites where we go put that company public information that everyone in the organization can or should see. And then we step back and we go department private or project private. And we put the things that only the appropriate people should see because they're working on it and they're doing stuff. Teams is for teamwork. Come on, did you do it? I did it right. Which means team sites everywhere. Did anyone have the pleasure of going to the SharePoint Admin Center in the early days of Teams when users were just kind of poking at it for fun? Holy crap. It was ridiculous. There were sites everywhere. Brenda's test team, Joy's to do. I actually saw a girl, she had a J name. I don't remember the full name. We'll say Joy. Test team, to do team, tasks team. I was like, this girl wants to be very organized. Someone needs to come in and help her do that because it was really going about it the wrong way. If one of the things you're looking at doing is coming from even classic SharePoint Online or on-prem, looking at those nested child sites, moving, it's the time to do it, right? 'Cause it's just better to rip that Band-Aid off, break them out. Look at those subsites that haven't been touched in a year. Maybe we should archive those. There is not a magic archive process inside of Microsoft 365. There are things you can do and create and build, but you can't just go archive and it automatically knows what to do with stuff. That's a conversation for another day. If you need help, find me later, call me, okay? Consolidate the sites that honestly there's duplicated effort. The security is the same in subsite A and subsite Q. Maybe we should build those together. Consolidate, streamline the architecture as is appropriate. Give them a team. Give them a team. Subsites, if we migrate subsites that are inheriting permissions from that parent site in the site collection, they're going to need permissions reviewed and rebuilt. Honestly, everything needs to have its permissions reviewed because that subsite's not going to have its own owners, members, and visitors when it gets recreated or moved over or migrated. So it's definitely spring cleaning. It definitely takes work. But once you get there, the payoff is fantastic. Because once I get into the admin center, this is true of the Teams admin center and the SharePoint admin center. I mean, I'm a SharePoint girl. That's typically where I live. More and more, I walk the line between SharePoint and Teams. But if I break everything out to be its own subsite, so they're all getting their own team in the information architecture, when I go to the admin center, I see exactly how many sites I'm working with. I have true representation. That is not true of subsites. I just see a site collection and the amount of data that's being used up. But I don't really see what's going on. Nothing's going to be hidden. By building out these teams with their own sites, instead of trying to do this stuff in subsites, I'm going to have fewer issues with broken permissions. Anyone ever had to walk users through broken permission issues? Oh, it's hard. And it's not their fault if they were working the way things have always been. And as we go flat with Teams, Teams has done wonders for modernizing architecture because we all want one. We all need to be working in one. It flattens that architecture out beautifully. The reason why that matters, search doesn't really consider things that are buried deep in the architecture as important as the things that are up higher. So if I'm working with subsites that go site, 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 or if I'm working inside my Files tab in Teams, if it goes folder, 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 folder inside that one Files tab, search is going to have a bad time. The architecture is flat, and it feels like it gets flatter every day. If we keep it flat and we use channels instead of folders and files, or we create extra libraries in SharePoint, tab to them in Teams, and keep it flat, search is going to work great. Your page load times on the SharePoint side of the world are going to be faster. Indexing is going to be much more efficient. Have you ever seen the situation in SharePoint 2 where you're clicking around and it can't quite get you to where you want to go? Maybe search can't find the thing, or you get broken URLs. And a lot of that is because deeply nested subsites or folders, when we start breaking it out and building our own site collections that are tied to Teams, those problems start going away. And it's beautiful. I have had a lot of people make the comment that, well, if I create a team for everything that was a subsite before, that's going to be a lot of teams. It's going to be a lot of subsites. We've always had that many workspaces. They were just kind of buried away where you didn't see them, so it wasn't top of mind for you. And you get 2 million. That feels like it's a good bit of room to work with. If you start bumping up against the 2 million site collection limit because of creating teams, might be time to talk about, really investigate what's going on with Teams creation. Do we have a lot of people duplicating efforts across the organization? You know, that little thing called sprawl. That is real and it exists. All right, that was all the boring technical stuff. But Teams is for teamwork, and Team sites are for collaboration. And I can't say enough about how much I enjoy the fact that Teams takes this collaboration we already were doing, and it brings the communication aspect to it in ways that are just really fantastic once we learn how to embrace it and kind of do it the right way. Definitely going to be some growing pains involved. But we've always traditionally used our team sites for department work, department, group, project specific stuff, right? Our operations people, safety, HR, IT, we all had our workspaces, probably publishing sites. They were the more secured sites on the intranet, and they were there because there were specific work streams, securities, processes, metadata, things like that that those teams were working. So it totally makes sense that we recreate that and build that with teams in mind. We get our document organization. SharePoint's still sitting there, so alerts don't go away. Those old-fashioned alerts, they're still there. They're still not amazing, but it's something to get the job done, to know when something's happening in your library. Wire it up in SharePoint. All the activity that happens in Teams is going to trigger those alerts. Same with flows. Announcements, Teams meeting, all that good stuff. So when we take that and we marry it with Teams, we really get to the next level of collaboration. So let's talk for half a minute about how Teams promotes teamwork. Seems to be a really fun after-hours session. When I break out of the mold of the more traditional way of working, first thing means I have to rethink how I use email. That's a big deal. That's a huge deal, actually. But who here wishes they could at least get one more email every day? No? 5 more? No, we don't. We live in email overload. And I especially love it when it's like that thread that's got 30 responses and it just won't die. Do you stop paying attention after the 5th reply all? You kind of do. You got specific people on an email thread. They're having this conversation and it's just looping around. It's getting buried. You didn't see this. Oops, Bob should have been on that. I'm so sorry. Let me go forward this email conversation to Bob so Bob can chime in. So Bob can chime in, be part of the conversation. Well, what happens when you got 5 people over here and Bob over here? They don't know what Bob's saying. Bob doesn't know what they're saying, and you're playing monkey in the middle. Nobody likes that, especially Bob. He got left out. He's like, you didn't know I was critical for this project? Oops, sorry, Bob, forgot about you. But if I take what would have been in an email and go put that inside of the posts, inside of the team, where everybody that's involved in either that departmental process or that project is there. Everyone that needs to know about that information can consume it, respond to it as needed. And let's be real. I may not have something insightful to say to that message that my boss posts, but at least I know about it. I'm in the loop. So when something happens next week, I'm not like, well, nobody told me. Oh, sorry, we left you off that email. I mean, it happens. It happens quite a bit. Another scenario that plays out in email quite a bit, I am very guilty of this, so I'm totally pointing this back at myself. I have a tendency to, it's not that I'm playing favorites, but it just, as it happens, the projects I work on, typically I'm working with the same core group of people in those projects over and over and over again. Or you probably have the people at work in your department that you just click with really well. They get how you work, you get how they work. And if you have a question, you need to think through something, those are your go-to people. But if I were to open up, instead of just emailing those go-to people, and go put that in the team where we're all present, now I'm getting the benefit of all the other people in that team weighing in. I'm getting their expertise, I'm getting their knowledge, and we're growing as an organization in tacit knowledge. So it becomes very powerful when we take those messages and put them in teams instead of just siloing it inside of the email threads in our inbox. At Pate Group, when we started using Teams for our project work, it's like cheating when you're a consultant or you're doing project work, because we build a team for the client and a channel for every scope of work we do for the customer. It just writes itself. When we started doing that, our internal email went down by about 85%. 85%. That's a big deal. And it shifted the weight of the inbox pretty heavily. Now when my inbox comes in, it's probably going to be from a client with important information that I can then go get the email channel from email address from Teams and forward it to that appropriate channel. So my whole team now is aware of that information that the customer has shared with us. So now my information architecture isn't just giving me a place to put things. It's not just documents. It's also facilitating conversations, communication, and the sharing of knowledge inside of the organization. And channels are way more conducive to chat than an email thread, right? I get tired of that email thread pretty quick. I'm probably not going to use the new feature in Outlook on the web to go put a really awesome GIF inside of an email thread. Just don't. Channel inside of Teams, oh heck yes. In fact, in my company, we start piling in. We see who has the best GIF they can put in there. Because heaven forbid you have fun at work, right? You can have fun and work in Teams in ways that email just is like, eh. It gets people talking. It gets people's attention. And if a work-appropriate GIF gets a developer's attention, so they're actually coming in and consuming the information, I've now tricked them to engage in the conversation. Sometimes you have to do that. It's searchable. Do you know you can use Control-F inside of Teams? It'll search where you are. I love that. Shortcut Sherry. I have a shortcut on the screen. Microsoft Search is coming to Teams, right? When I'm searching inside of Teams now, it's like, oh, were you looking for this file? Were you looking for this document? It's getting better. Teams and Search haven't always had the best relationship. That's definitely getting better. And one thing that's really fantastic is the fact that files are going to be organized into the appropriate channel when we're doing our job right, as opposed to hiding in emails. I cannot stand in Outlook to go find that little bitty almost arrow and click it to expand that long thread to find the original paper clip attachment that's somewhere in there. It's showing me the paper clip here, but I can't click that, right? So I have to go find it, or I go to my team. Or if you're like me and you're super lazy, you just search from anywhere inside of Microsoft 365 and let it bring it back to you. But that's a conversation for another day. So this is a real life example, sorta, of how we build our team. So I got my project Excel here. This is the Pate Group tenant This is my demo team that I use. This is exactly how we build our teams for our client or customer projects. We all get general, right? That's the first thing you get. That's Teams' version of shared documents. You get your general channel. That's a great place to put things that are general information that applies to all of whatever your team is about, right? Tab to the all IT policies and procedures. Tab to the, I don't know, what do we think? What are the other things? The training content that's produced if you're part of the training group in your company. Put that in there. Next up, for me, in my role at Pate Group, I do deployment planning. And what that means is I go and I sit down with a customer that's trying to figure out how to either get into Microsoft 365 or how to make it better. I go in and I talk with them, and I talk with, I don't know, usually 4 to 6 small groups from the business areas in their company. What do you do every day? How's that working for you? What's really great? What is killing you and we need to fix it now, right? Have those conversations, and I generate a lot of information out of that. And I put it in the Files tab of deployment planning because it's a deployment planning document. And if Steven, my coworker, is working on doing the environmental assessment of their file shares and whatever they got going on with their files, he's going to bundle that up. And he's going to drop it in the Files tab of deployment planning. If I need to ask him a question, that's where I go. Because my channels are the architecture of my team. And that's going to keep my conversations and my content organized. It's a twofer. And when it's time to go build the intranet, woohoo, they signed the statement of work. I'm going to create a channel for implementation and migration. And guess what I'm going to put there? Anything about implementation and migration for that customer. And it just keeps building. Now, if I'm a department, it's not quite as easy as that. Right? You're not writing a statement of work for your team to go, today we're going to pay money to go do this one thing. You're working on processes, you're working on procedures, you've got contracts that are going back and forth, you've got renewals for things. Talk with your team, and I love Sherry mentioned this earlier. What about those really big folders on the file shares and the shared drives that were for your department? How are those named? One of the first things we do when we're getting ready to do a migration for a customer is we look at what they're already working with. And how can we map that over into Teams and SharePoint? So if you've got a file that's schedules, that tells me we probably need something over here for schedules. Now, if you're putting calendars in Excel, talk to me. Please don't put calendars in Excel. We can do way better for you now. But we could come in here, we could do channel calendars, we could have a place where you talk about shifts. Oh, there's already shifts in Teams. But how do you manage that as a department? What are the things you do as a group, as a team, as a department in your organization? What are the things you talk about? You create those channels for those specific things. Now let's say contracts. Once a contract is signed, sealed, delivered, it probably shouldn't change, right? So I probably don't need a channel for completed contracts because channels really, really shine when I'm using them for that fast and furious collaboration. We're editing, we're in there, we're having conversations, we're doing stuff. But I may need an easy button where I could go click and get to the completed contracts for a particular customer or client, right? Create a document library in SharePoint, tab to it inside of Teams. Keeps these channels from getting really cluttered. In the other side of the screen here, the screenshot, that's all of those standard channels from Teams as they appear inside of SharePoint. Now you notice we've got a couple of private channels here, these little guys that's got the padlock. Those will not show up inside of that documents library for that Teams connected site. Because every time I create a private channel for my team, I'm getting a whole other site that's associated with it. I'm growing my architecture by one. Because SharePoint best practice is you apply permission at the largest object possible. That's a site. It's the largest object possible. I can't accidentally trip and bump somebody into a private channel because it's in their own site. I have to explicitly add them in. Fun fact, as of right now, the sites that are associated with that private channel in Teams are not discoverable in the SharePoint Admin Center. But they are from the Teams Admin Center, right? Because it's kind of considered a Teams thing. Teams went and did it, So Teams gets to manage it, kind of how I view that. Do you guys have any particular experience or policies or ways that you're managing private channels inside of your organization? Or is it being managed inside of your organization? Sometimes it's not. Yeah.
I get a question a lot when customers ask me if they should just shut it off, and why would you do that?
That's a fair question. Because I as well get a lot of customers is like, so you're saying we should probably turn off private channels. As a consultant, I say, well, it depends, right? Sometimes, depending on the organization, if they don't really have a good handle on this and things are really messy, maybe for a minute we should go ahead and switch that off in the admin center, put a request process in so we can have some conversations with people. And I apologize in advance, I'm about to put a slide up here that has a lot of words on it. And typically I hate that, but it's something we're going to talk through. The slide deck's going to be available. Maybe this will be a resource that'll be helpful about private channels. Okay. I came out of the government side of the world, so I was trained up to be paranoid. But it pays off well when we're talking about security. So the way I phrase it, and I still intentionally use this phrasing because it gets people's attention. Okay, Joy, we want to create a team and all of the channels are going to be private channels because it's going to be the HR team and then every channel is going to be where the different departments go and work. I have backed people out of that scenario many times because it's horrible. When you do that, nobody can use those shared assets that are part of a team, like the planner plan, like the OneNote, like all the things. So we get them out of there. They're like, okay, well, we're going to create a wellness team, but we still need a private channel. Okay, let's have that conversation. When you're thinking about creating a private channel, 2 questions. Are all of the people that you're going to put in this private channel, are they already part of this one same team? And is it a breach of security? That's my phrase. Is it a breach of security if everyone on that team sees the content and the conversation of that private channel? Okay, yes, they're all on the team, and it's really not a big deal for the security. Usually in that situation, it's a good Samaritan that is just trying to keep people from seeing a lot of channels that they may not care about. Because let's get real, channel sprawl is real, right? Sometimes it's unavoidable. At this point, though, that's not a justification for granular permissions, right? So let's go ahead and make that a standard channel. And let's teach people how to hide channels that they're really not a part of, that they don't care about. Of course we care, but we don't care sometimes. Hide it. How to mute it so I'm not seeing the notifications. Maybe I want to see the channel, but I'm going to mute it. And it's just if it goes bold, I'll go look in when I have spare time in a year or 2. Okay? Okay, next time. Are all of the people already in the same team? No. I need to bring in people from corporate communications into the wellness private channel. I can't do that with a private channel. I can only bring in people that are already part of the existing team in that Microsoft 365 group. If I need to bring in extra people for this private channel, I either have to add them to the whole team as an owner or a member, or I need to go create a cross-functional team currently where corporate comms and wellness can work together on stuff. Coming soon, end of November, I believe, Teams Connect, the shared channel, is going to be rolling out. And I think that's going to give us what we need here. We shall see. I saw that. I know, we'll see.
Does it create another section?
Probably. Probably going to be growing the architecture by 1. But if you're creating a cross-functional team, it's doing that anyway. So, either way, you're expanding your architecture of 1, but that's better than granular permissions. But another thought is, well, maybe these people from corporate communications, we don't need them in chat. I just want them to go review this document that I've done and give me a final thumbs up or thumb down. Just add them to the SharePoint site. Create a library in the SharePoint site. Only give them permission to the library. Rock and roll. Rock and roll. Just that chat's the defining thing there. All right, so next is both. Kind of, sort of. Yeah, everyone is in the team, but it is a breach of security if everyone in the team sees the content and the conversation in what I want to create as a private channel. That's your cubbyhole. That is the exact perfect use case for creating that private channel. In my example here, I did the PM, the project management channel, because that's where maybe my company president and the lady that does our invoicing and our project manager can talk about like the financials and stuff that I, as like I'm the hammer or the screwdriver, the tool in the tool belt for the company. I don't need to know if the customer's paying or not. I don't need to know what the PO number is. All of that can be handled inside of that private channel, but everything that's happening in there absolutely applies to this team because it's about the project. So it still relates. They just need a cubbyhole with security around it. That's your use case for a private channel. If you are considering consulting people or even in your organization turning it off, I get it. I'm not saying that's a bad idea. I'm not saying that's 100% the thing to do. If we do that, give them a way to reach out to request it. And make sure whoever's going to get that request knows how to have the conversation and can be very responsive. Because if we start locking down functionality in something that's supposed to enhance collaboration, oh, people get frustrated. And we all do, right? Let go. Tabs are magic. Tabs are to Teams what a link in navigation is to SharePoint, right? If I can browse to it on the internet, I can put a tab to it inside of Teams. If it's an app you've got going on, if you ever just look through all the tabs that are available by default, there's a billion of them. My company, we've got them all turned on too because we like to play and we want to show people what's available. If in your organization or if you work with customers, you're trying to help them figure out this Teams thing and they're like, we got to turn this off. Okay, I get it. That is not a bad idea. But have conversations with your business stakeholders. Find out, are you using, not Box, are you using Avocado? I have no idea what that is. But if you're using it and you turn it off, people are going to get frustrated. Or if they don't know there's an app for it, and you can put a tab and show them how they don't ever have to leave Teams, they can just click that easy button and it's right there. That's kind of magical. I think Spiceworks is a ticketing system in here, Zendesk, GitHub, right? So the things we're already using as the organization make it easy for folks to get there. Because we've already debunked time and time again that there is no such thing as effective multitasking. There's definitely such a thing as really bad multitasking, and I do it a lot, right? Because I'm kind of listening to the meeting, and I'm also working on my PowerPoint slides for CommsV Next, and then my boss says, Joy, what do you think about that? I am so sorry, Stephanie, you cut out just a little bit. Could you please rephrase the question? All the time. We all know what's happening. We're multitasking badly. Instead of trying to do everything at once, Microsoft is putting a lot of time and effort into reducing context switching, giving us as human beings the ability to actually kind of stay in one place and focus just a little bit better. And that is the magic behind tabs and even being able to pin things to the left rail inside of Teams, like the Yammer communities, your calendar, all that good stuff. I don't have to play application hopscotch. If I've got my OneDrive content I want to get to all the time, because OneDrive is absolutely part of our information architecture, just being able to click on files there, see my stuff. I don't have to close Teams or go to my taskbar and open File Explorer or go to the browser and find, no. Nope, just click the Files button. If there is an Excel spreadsheet that your team uses because you update it weekly and at the end of the month, everybody better have their updates in, tab to it in whatever channel makes the most sense for your team. Now you don't have to go look for the last time Joy sent it out in email. It's just there. It's magic. Do you have a homepage that you're using that's tied to your team site and you want to be able to see the news and announcements from it? There's a SharePoint tab right there, your OneNote notebook for all your meeting notes, right? Put everything in one place. I mean, I've said it a couple of times, I'll say it again. It's almost magical when you don't have to go around the world and back again to get to your stuff. So if you're gonna shut some of these down, I get it, I recommend it. Find out what people are using. If you start asking that question too, you might find some shadow IT out there, give you a really good chance to address it. Really? Operations is using Dropbox, huh? Did you know we have OneDrive? Magic. Shut it down, right? So the way it starts to break down inside of the architecture is SharePoint. We've got those communication sites for that organizational-wide content. It gives me a place to go, consume, put the news out there, bring our Yammer community's own web parts on the page. All the things that I need to get to as an employee, as an individual at this organization, somehow, some way, I get to them through the communication sites, the homepage, those department landing pages. Then Teams is for teamwork. That's my task-based, purpose-driven, gotta get it done workspace. And let's be real, we're probably part of a lot of teams these days. A lot of teams. I think I'm up to about 60 in a company of less than 20 employees. We're busy. We also need to do a better job of archiving. That's a conversation for another day. Being able to manage your teams inside of Teams, where you do your teamwork with your team, starts to streamline that quite a bit. Hide those teams you're not in a lot. Silence those notifications that aren't really meaningful for you. The personal app mention is amazing if we don't overuse it. If you overuse it, it's horrible. But I can tell people on side of a particular project, hey, my time here is done. I'm not really active in this project right now, but if you need me, tag me in, right? At mention me, I will be there. Otherwise, I'm hiding this, and I'll only go see it every other Thursday when I just scroll through my hidden teams. If you need me, say my name and I'll be there, right? Manage those channels and those teams. Teams becomes that kind of centralized place. Am I going to say it that way? I'm going to say it that way. Kind of like the file share used to be, because it's fast and it's easy. But we can bring a lot more organization to it. And I'll be honest, every time I do a discovery about a file share, one of the first things people say is, well, yeah, there's security there because nobody can find anything. Hey, let's clean that up. Let's get it organized inside of Teams, where we have the appropriate security around it. We can use those tabs to get to the places you need to get to, your reference content. Have your conversation and your content side by side. Really becomes a great place to be. If you've done some migrations, you've come over from on-prem, perhaps you just have some classic team sites that are being modernized, but there's not a Microsoft 365 group associated with it, no worries. This used to give us a little bit of a hard time. But I can now, when I go to create a team, I can create from a group or team. That lets me tie teams to an existing team site. If that team site doesn't have an Microsoft 365 group, I got to run a PowerShell script to groupify it. Then I can come over here and teamify it. So I can start to marry it together, and I don't have to fight with having duplicate sites in the architecture. I want to tell you something, though. This is off topic a little bit, but I'll tell you, I've learned the hard way. If that classic site has publishing activated, if it does not give you heartburn to migrate the content off of it, create a new site, migrate the content off of it. The publishing feature, I used to turn it on everywhere because it gave me great things I could do with the navigation. It is a thorn in my side these days because now the navigation acts a little bit weird, the homepage doesn't modernize quite right. So if you've got a lot of publishing activated on classic sites, this is the free portion of today's session, just start fresh with a brand new modern site. It will save you a lot of time and effort if the migration's not going to be horrible. And then, if you were in my session yesterday, this will look familiar. I'm going to go to operations. We start to build out architecture where we've got links on SharePoint sites, team sites, communication sites to go to that important information people are using. And then Teams marries to every team site. My updated version where it says team site or teams, I put under that per functional area. Because if you try to cram it all into one, the permissions probably aren't going to be right. And people won't have, I don't know, elbow room for discrete metadata. Team site per functional area. In this operations example, I was starting to build out some architecture for a store that has, or a retail company that has stores. And they want a hub, which is going to be a communication site. Every retail location is going to get their own team. And all those team sites are going to get hubified under that one central thing so management can get wherever they need to go. So hub sites kind of come in and can help consolidate the architecture. But it starts to build out, we keep it flat. That operations box up there, that is not a site, it's just a label. Nothing lives there. It lives on my communication sites and my team sites. So a conversation we have inside my company quite a bit, is Teams part of the intranet? I say yes. If I'm doing intranet planning, I've got to plan for my user base, for my customers to have place for their company public and their department private. And that's where Teams comes in and shines for that department private, department specific, collaborative effort. All right, we're almost done. We're almost done. If I could get off the magnifying glass. Favorite slide in the whole deck. Questions, comments, fun stories, not jokes, all are accepted. Yes, happily, that's an easy question. She said, and then the slide deck didn't respond. There it is. You are very welcome.
Joy, question for you.
Yes.
What would you say is the most challenging thing with getting end users to adopt Teams?
I mean, the overall change thing, yeah, but letting go of folders.
Oh, dear.
Folders, I'm being recorded, aren't I? Folders are the F word in SharePoint. And they have been for a really long time. With modern architecture, boy, it really highlights it because of the way it impacts search, the way it impacts indexing, page load time. You really don't want to go down more than 3 levels deep inside of your document library. And let's be honest, who really clicks all 20 folders to find that one document? Or do they finally, when they find that one document, put a shortcut to it or save a copy off somewhere? Right? We're really not clicking all those folders deep. But I was having this conversation like the year before COVID, so officially that was last year now, right? We're just pretending 2020 didn't happen. So last year in 2019, I was giving a speech and I had my slide up about improving search by reducing folder depth. I actually had a table of ladies in the back corner of the ballroom scream. Scream. That felt a little overly dramatic. And if I'm saying something's overly dramatic, it really is. But a channel really is a folder in SharePoint, right? There are people here I could probably talk to today and go, why did you do that? But you're already getting a folder with it, so just make another channel. Yeah, put it in a library if it's not going to be edited. Getting people to let go of 30-year-old file structure mentality is really, really hard because it's what we know. Yes, sir?
I have another question for you. What about the importance of information architecture on naming your teams? How do we encourage people who are usually in a rush to just create a new team for a project or an initiative or a fundraiser or whatever, to force them, so to speak, to follow the naming conventions within the organization, to be easy to find, and when they're viewing the teams in the hierarchy, to quickly find it and to get to what they're looking for. Any suggestions there, Joy?
There are some scripts that you can run to create some policies for naming conventions. Who loves PowerShell? Have at it. Woo, PowerShell. That's why I have a Stephen Wilson at my company. He is my PowerShell guru. But you can enforce certain naming conventions so that I, as an employee, can't go create the HR team, right? Because there's already an HR team, Joy. You don't get to go make your own. I can put some prefixes in it, suffixes in it for locations and things like that. There's some governance tools out there too that can help with that. AvePoint has a really fancy governance tool that can kind of help you implement some of that. Orchestry does as well. I don't typically point people to third-party tools. I'm saying that even though we have amazing vendors here, different space, but those two are definitely top of mind. Create a request process. If you're like, no, I'm not going to do that PowerShell thing. I hate PowerShell. Okay, fine. No, I'm not going to buy a third-party tool. I respect that. Turn off the ability for users to be able to create Office 365 groups. Sorry, you got to run a script for that. But once you do that, they don't see create a team. And then you create a request process. Who's going to be in the team? Who's going to be your owners? Do you know who your members are? List them here. What's it for? What would you like to call it? And have some subject matter experts in your company that can address that request quickly and get that implemented for them. There are options. We got options. We got so many options.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Can you go back one?
Uh-huh.
Sorry if I missed it, but you, at the bottom there, it says renaming documents on the site to save file.
Yeah, so
Okay. Like, do I need to repeat it? I was just going to ask you what the last bullet point kind of.
she's asking about
expand on.
renaming documents in SharePoint to save files. If this is a new crazy thing for people, and there's a lot of confusion around what's going on with Teams, SharePoint, the left nav inside of a Teams site says documents. And that's the library that holds the folders for the channel, which in Teams is called files. But if you go to your site and just rename that files, so instead of shared documents, it's files, then your users go, oh, files. Okay, because you can't rename files to shared documents. So if you go to SharePoint and rename it, that could help. That could help considerably with that light bulb kind of going, oh, that makes sense. Yes, ma'am.
Use the URL is actually shared documents.
It is.
We've got documents, we've got shared documents.
You've got all the things. It's all the things. But 80-20. 20% of people look at the URL, 80 don't. So you only get a few questions on the URL not matching. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then if you do social media, please hunt me down at Joy of SharePoint. I'm on Twitter a lot. I'm on Instagram a little bit, still trying to figure that beast out. But thank you, thank you, thank you. If you have more questions, find me.